Good morning. This is News with Nathan. Happy Thursday. Good to see you here. Good to have you here. Thanks so much for being a part. Sorry for the delay this morning. I know it's like 10 a, almost like past 10 a.m. Eastern time, but had a bit of difficulties with Wi-Fi this morning and just kicking the day off. Actually, but today was actually a really great and unique day. Normally, I start off my mornings like I normally do. I start off with a little bit of, meditation and thinking, followed by studying. And today's studying topics was really great. However, what was even better than study time today was the association this morning. I got to hang out and we went to, I met up with a group of friends, some new friends here, and we went for a walk. We went walking. It's like a walking group. And that was fantastic. Listen, I've been all over this island for the past over 30 years. I've been coming to this island and there's still places I still haven't visited. And it's phenomenal to see a new place that I've never been. And I want to do more of that. Welcome to the show. And if you're new here, put a new in the comments section, or if you have any questions that you want to share along the way. This is my time, and I'm your host, Nathan Amaral, and this is where I bring you relevant and new news for the real estate investing industry. I am not a TV commentator, you and text and all that. And I wanted a place to be relevant for you to get like a dose of real estate investing news. I know there's a lot of news out there with, whether it's politics and the stock market or COVID and all that kind of stuff. There's just a whole bunch. But I wanted to give you a place that you could just get highlights and news tidbits, or even ask real estate investing questions. And so here we are with News with Nathan. And most of the topics that we've been covering just recently has been the trends and things that have been changing in the marketplace and changing in the real estate investing niche. And you guys heard me just talk about recently how we have been seeing Zillow offers and iBuyer get back up and running and even expand markets. Okay, they're even Zillow Group was just recently stating that they're expanding markets. However, there was a recent poll and survey of some of the top real estate CEOs. And we're talking like Redfin, Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com, and also Century 21. And also I have another one here, Compass. So there's been some research done and some feedback, and I wanted to share that with you today. I also wanted to kick it off with a little joke. I want to show you this image that I found, and this is so very true. Is since we're talking about Zillow, it says, but Zillow says my home is worth $1 million. And this is actually, have you ever experienced this as a real estate investor? Or maybe you've used Zillow before in your life, where they have this Zestimate, and the Zestimate can be kind of tricky because it's not always correct. Actually, the CEO themselves of Zillow have said that, hey, please, Zestimate is not an appraisal. It is not certified. It's just a ballpark. And they've been trying to work on that Zestimate. So it's not always accurate, but it's something they're working towards. The Zillow Group does have, I would say, the most progressive data gathering and database in regards to real estate, in the market right now. They're big on data. So they're trying to perfect the Zestimate. But it's kind of frustrating when you're investing as a real estate investor or looking for a property, and then that Zillow estimate, the Zestimate, keeps coming up in conversation, when it can be sometimes not just $10,000 off. Sometimes it can be $80,000 off from market value, or $100,000 off. And that just does not work. So I wanted to give you a little bit of updates about what some of these CEOs have been saying in regards to the current market trends and what's been happening. So this was actually a research done by Inman News, and what they've been seeing with how virtual technology can play a part in real estate. So I want to kick it off with Redfin CEO Glenn Kelman, because he actually makes some really great points And he says that, these are the newest trends that we're seeing, such as virtualizing listings. We're seeing more 3D home tours and new systems being put into place that should have been done. He calls it the new normal. He says this should probably have been done before 2020, and this is going to be the new normal. And guys, if you know, for some time, I've been doing remote real estate for over 5 years, and remote, buying real estate remotely, or, being able to see properties has always, in the beginning, was a challenge, but then you kind of create systems around this because there wasn't really the technologies to support it. So I would have to either send someone out to the property to take pictures and video and then send it back to me, upload it to a Google Drive, right? So we're seeing a lot of these technological changes happen a lot faster. And as I mentioned yesterday, and by the way, guys, there was a 400% increase. I could get some of these where the quote came from, but I was talking yesterday about Notarize.com. They said they had a 400% increase in notarizations. Fantastic! Just confirms what I was saying yesterday. I should have had the article open today. I saw that yesterday evening. And so there's just been this digitalization and increase in virtualization in the marketplace. So also we have, we also have Trulio's co-founder, Pete Flint, and he also just said how agents need to stay relevant. Okay, this is coming from Pete Flint at Trulia. And he said they need to stay relevant in the industry in light of the pandemic, and that things are moving to more virtual trainings, even FaceTime tours. Okay. And he makes a great comment here. This is what I love about what Flint said. He said, a 5-year revolution has happened in 3 months. That's very powerful. Think about that. What's going to happen, what was potentially supposed to happen in the next 5 years. Remember yesterday I was saying how this is going to probably take 10 years over the course of time, right? By the time, market, by the time the market really gets acclimated to this. But he said it best. He said, what should have taken 5 years of retention and this revolution has now just happened, zipped up in 3 months. That's why yesterday when I was saying, I wish there was just a law that could just come into place and say, no, now all e-notarizations can happen. And no, virtual tours, right? It should be a way of life. It just takes the market sometimes a little bit longer. So unfortunately we had, COVID as the pusher in this situation to make this happen in 3 months. And Flint also adds, he says, I look at what 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds are doing, how they are conducting their business. They're doing everything from their cell phone. And that's a very important part, right? That's a very true statement. And I know that goes even beyond some 30-year-olds. Of course, we have an older generation where they may not be, using their cell phones as much for all these types of transactions and parts of their business. But this is something to really consider. Look at what the future generation is doing and don't hesitate to change or to adapt. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to teach the old dog new tricks. It's hard to adapt to new things. There's some things that are coming out right now that even I feel like I'm being left behind. And I'm serious. And I look at my kids and I look at virtual reality and I'm like, right? I look at virtual reality like, do I really need to do that right now? But I could be saying the same thing that I tell previous generations, the boomer generation, yeah, this is the thing now, right? So I could probably hear my kids saying Dad, just put on your goggles, right? And those are things that we need to be mindful of, especially in a competitive global economy, right? Now we have people being able to buy remotely more than ever. Competition just is not in your own backyard anymore. Now it's across the country, from around the world. I think it was predicted today that over 100 companies from China alone went public today on the stock market, between the NASDAQ and between the New York Stock Exchange and what was the other one? New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ. And maybe the S&P 500, but it was a mix. It was a mix of companies, but over 100 of them were Chinese. I mean, think about that. So now it's more of a global right? We know that it's a global world and global business we live in, and so that's something to keep in mind. Now, the other quote I wanted to share with you was from Compass CEO Robert Refkin. He discussed that racial injustices that he faced as a young black man, and mentioned that he was often the only black man at companies he worked at in the beginning of his career. He said, "It's okay not to be okay in this time." And I know that what we're seeing now, especially with a lot of a lot of topics and a lot of changes, even in what's going on with social injustice and even racial injustice, that these things are going to make even changes, even in real estate, right? We're going to see some changes that even make an impact in real estate, and it should, by right. It's about time. I did a post the other day where I said it's time for change, right? And enough is enough, right? Enough is enough. When are things going to happen? And I always, if you follow my talks closely, one of the most annoying or aggravating things that is always on my mind, I feel like we're very behind as a human race. But if you look at maybe the United States or just in overall culture, I feel like the human race is very behind. Very behind. And it's an angst that I have. It's a thorn in my side, because I envisioned that when at the year 2000, Y2K, do you remember Y2K? Do you remember when everything was supposed to reset? I mean, who knows? But that never happened. But I remember after Y2K, I remember thinking about 2020, probably because it was going to be the first time that two numbers, 2020 would be together, right? So I remember, wow, after living the year 2000, I said, man. Oh, and another thing too, I remember playing this video game as a kid called SimCity 2000. I don't know if you ever heard of that game, SimCity 2000, but I was an addict, and I played that game, and I remember living in the 1990s and playing that game in the 90s, thinking, wow, the year 2000, it's going to be amazing, right? 1995, 97, 98, I was playing a game, mostly hockey games, but also SimCity 2000, and I thought, wow, I think the future should be like SimCity 2000. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And here we are at 2020, 20 years later, and I still think we're behind. Now, the eastern part of the world, China, Japan, and other Asian countries, are 10 years, easily 10 years ahead of the rest of the world. And it boggles my mind how behind the rest of the world is. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. This is more of an opinionated news show at this point, because I'm just not only venting, but I'm saying how in a negative sense the COVID is, and it's taking people's lives. It's making people deathly sick, and ill. Some of my close friends have been affected. Some extended friends and family have died. That's not cool. That's not fun. But I can see how also in every moment of chaos and tragedy, there is a rebirth. And I think this is truly a rebirth for the world. I really do. I think it's a time where there's no more going back. And I love that part of it. And I think you should too, because when we look at what we've done before, it shouldn't be that way. Yesterday, I was talking about the process of getting on an airplane. I mean, think about before 9/11, right? Process of the airplanes was like magical, right? You just walk right in, right? And now with all this hyped security that we have, which is great, we need to be secure, especially with pieces of metal in the sky. I get it. But now it's 2020. And now what we have is with COVID and now new security, biometrics. Yeah, we should be there already. This should have been 2010. We should have had biometrics in airports, in government buildings, in private companies. And there's a lot of good companies taking strides towards this. And unfortunately, sometimes they're the more larger companies. They're the more, larger, I want to say corporate American companies, right? That have these things in place. So you can kind of see it, but the trickle down effect is just really slow, really, really slow. So I'm glad to see that when we have COVID, it has actually moved people out of, for health reasons, for health protection, as well as, changing the normal. Changing the normal. Most people are calling this the new normal. Do you agree? Do you think this is a new normal? And also, I'd like to know, do you think this is good? What we're moving forward virtually. Do you think it's good or bad? I'd love to know. Post your yes or no in the comment section. I'd like to know, do you think it's good or bad that we are moving forward with more technological advances because of COVID? Love to know this is my Pew poll, my public Pew poll. But I'd love to hear that from you. And this is what I think is really important right now in the marketplace on many aspects of business. If you look at it, it's amazing because we look at something like a company like Zoom, for example. You look at a company like Zoom, which everybody now knows Zoom. It's so interesting. Before COVID, like I've been using Zoom since maybe 2015. I don't know. It's been a long time, right? And virtual platforms for virtual conferences. And I've been using these softwares for a long time. And it's interesting how now we have a company like Zoom as an example, and I'm using them as a highlight. Of course, there's many others, but we have a company like Zoom that has instantly grown in value, become one of the most valuable companies in the world just because of the transition, right? And that's happened with a lot of companies. Look, we got Amazon at, over $3,000, currently stock price $3,118. I mean, did you ever think that was going to happen? Did you think about that? Remember when Amazon first started? I remember when Amazon first started. I'll tell you how. As a side hustle with my Portuguese entrepreneurship blood, I would find books, my own books first, then my mom's books, just a few because my mom likes her books. And then I'd find books from other people. But then it got even more serious. I even found free books at the local college that I was going to. They would have these boxes, these empty, like these cardboard boxes, and they put them in the hallway, and it would say free books. I was like, free books. Now, mind you, I would have walked past those books because they were all different topics. Okay, they were all different topics at the time, and I wasn't studying any of those topics. I was in an entrepreneurship program. So when I was looking at these books, I was like, well, this is nothing I would have walked right by it. However, at that time, I was selling books on Amazon.com. Nobody was doing that at the time. So when I would walk through the hallways and I'd see these books in the hallways that said free books, I'm like, aha, I'm already selling books. So I looked at some of these books. I'll never forget, I made over $400 on one book. By the way, I know today this has been resolved or being worked on in some way. I've heard stories about this, but the cost of books for universities is outrageous. It's absolutely a rigged system. Okay. That's just absurd. But books were costing $300, $200. Oh, everything was over $100 for a book. Absolutely insane. And talk about being a rigged system. It's like the universities were their own gurus. Like, you know what I mean? Like they were own gurus selling higher priced information for no reason, right? So because of the transition with technology. So what happened, what I was doing, I remember I went through all these books and I was like, wow, look at all these books. I mean, I could sell these books. And so I did. So I'd fill up my backpack and take these books home. I remember there's one book I made over $400. It was about firefighting. I was like, how did I make $400 on a book over firefighting? I used to make over $3,000 a month just on selling books from friends, family, anywhere I could get books where people were just discarding books. I found a way I could sell it. I did that for about 6 months, and never would I have thought Amazon would be what it is today, with a stock price over $3,100, which is fantastic. And so these are the transitions that are happening. I want you to think about that even when it comes to things like Zoom or other industries that are making drastic changes because of COVID and what's going to happen for the future, right? So think about that in real estate. Things that are changing, things that are evolving, and how processes are going to be different for the future because of what's taking place with technology advances. So that's it for today. I wanted to share that with you. And if you got some new aha moments or enlightenment out of this, let me know. Give a like or a comment below. And I will see you tomorrow. And listen, I promise tomorrow we'll have a few more, little more graphic stuff. I just ended up moving a lot of files and folders over, lost a bunch of stuff from the previous show, but we'll get it taken care of. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great